A list of things we're going to go through. This should take less than an hour, about an hour or so is what I'm kind of planning. At any point in time, if you guys have questions, feel free to stop and ask them. This is set up to be helpful for everybody in the field so that you guys have a refresher prior to going into this spring season. So again, anytime, stop and ask questions. Happy to answer them as we work through this. If you have a question about something, likely somebody else is wondering the same thing. So we will start with kind of just going through some preseason maintenance and what we're going to do there. I'm going to share a couple of different screens and kind of show you as we walk through some of this and where some of this information is coming from so that you guys can go back and review, manuals and documents afterwards. But I'm not going to read documents and manuals word for word. I'm going to cover some of the big highlight points from them. And then some of the more nitty gritty details will be in that in those documents for you. So to access these documents, I'm going to share my screen and show you where they're all at so that you guys have them. So if you guys go to our KSi website, just the ksiedge.com, you can type in Pivot Bio into the search bar. And then when you search for Pivot Bio, it's going to pop up a link here. Inside of this link has a bunch of different materials that we're going to go through. I guess where this is where the documents are found for you to access, whether it be kind of some overview videos, yearly startup procedures, which we'll touch on some of that stuff today, and then manuals, cleaning procedures, things like that. So that is where all the documents are found. Also on that document or on this website is just another reminder of the phone number that you guys can call into if you need in-season support. You can call into the KSi office, and option 1 is tech support, which will prompt you to enter your serial number from your screen, or you can use extension 72 and type in 72, and you'll get some support. I guess it's the sales team version of that. So option 1 is your automation support. Option 1, and then you'll type in your project number, and you'll get dedicated to our phone support team.
Well, I got in the phone anyway.
So I did. That support line is live and active already. So if you were to call into it this morning, and I did it just to make sure before I told you it was all live and active, you can type in your serial number and you'll get access to our phone support team who is there to assist and help. So some of the things, there's 4 or 5 main points that I want you guys to check for maintenance that I'm going to have you guys run through. So the first thing for your maintenance, and let me see if I can pull a document in the background. It's going to be conveyor maintenance. So those SMX conveyors that you guys have do require a little bit of maintenance. We have it all broken down in our manuals. And like I said, I'm not going to just go through and read these manuals word for word. Belt tracking. Belt tension and tracking. So the SMX conveyor should be set to 23 foot-pounds of torque. If you don't have a torque wrench, they're not that expensive. I'd go out and get one. The better maintenance you take or better care you take of your belt, the longer it's going to last. 23 foot-pounds is the spec for the SC02 SMX conveyor. If you guys have an 03, which there shouldn't be too many of those in the pivot world, just a couple of them, that number does change here. And that tension set point is on the side of the conveyor on a sticker, as well as here in the manual, broken down by model number. So the vast majority, again, of the pivot units are 1212 model, which is set to 23 foot-pounds of torque. If you guys are unfamiliar with torquing and tracking a conveyor and how to keep those belts aligned, you will, on the sides of those conveyors, there's tension rods. You'll adjust the jam or loosen the jam nut and tighten each side until you get 23 foot-pounds of torque. And then from there, just bump the conveyor, run it for a few seconds, and see if the belt moves left or right, and then tighten the side that it moved to. So if the belt moved off to the right side of the conveyor, you will tighten that same side jam nut. I don't recommend loosening the jam nuts as you're tracking them. That's where we see from a service call perspective, most people get into trouble with with that because they don't realize they're going the wrong direction. And we've had a few people flip belts as a result of that. So just tighten the belt down a little bit more. You can also go, if you're unfamiliar with how to do that, or that explanation doesn't quite get you what you need. KSi, we do have a YouTube page. There is a belt torquing and tracking video on our YouTube page. It is not specific to an SCO2 conveyor, but the process and how you do it is the same. And so you can do that. Other on your conveyors, a few other things that you can check. Go ahead and inspect. So on the top of that conveyor, you have are all the mixing baffles. That's what creates the motion in that seat and helps it mix and get more consistent coverage after the atomizer. Go ahead and pull those doors off. Inspect those baffles. Make sure those baffles are still there. Make sure those baffles don't have any intense signs of wear. For the amount of seed that have been run through these after a year, we shouldn't have any issues with those really, but be good to double check. Those do have the ability to raise and lower. So those baffles, as you're adjusting those baffles and looking at them, those baffles should be close enough to the belt that it does not allow seed to go under the belt, but not to the point where it's touching and rubbing on the belt. So they are slotted that you can adjust them up and down a little bit. So if they have worn down a little, you can lower them down to get them back closer to the belt to allow grain to not pass under it. If you need any of those baffles, you can call into the office to our parts line and they can get them to you, but those should still be in pretty good shape after just year one for most everybody. Moving on from that, while you have that open, it would not hurt to just run that conveyor and bump it till you get the splice on the top side so you can kind of look at the splice. If the splice is problematic, you will see it. It is pretty obvious when those splices start to go. Again, guys, this shouldn't be an issue year one, but it's just a good thing to check while you're in there looking at it. And then beyond that, there's those bearings. There's 4 bearings on those SMX conveyor, 2 at the tail, 2 at the head. Just give them a pump of grease to each bearing. One single pump. Don't need to overgrease them. Don't need grease spilling out of those bearings. Just give them one shot of grease and that will take care of it for the conveyor. Once you've got that belt torqued and tracked and running right, as long as you cleaned it up at the end of last year, you shouldn't need to power wash it or anything like that. If you notice that it didn't get quite cleaned out like you wanted last year, like it should have been, you can power wash those belts. My recommendation is that just don't put your power washer nozzles directly at the belt. You can definitely damage the belt and ruin the skiving on that belt by letting the power washer too close. The conveyor does slow down for most of yours. So on your screen, we'll cover that in a little bit. As you're cleaning, if you need to slow that conveyor down, you can do that. Make sure there's no weird buildups. Just check everything for. We find with conveyors, especially if they didn't get cleaned out incredibly well at the end of the last season, that critters like to get in there to get out of the elements and maybe find a nice little meal. So I would just inspect your conveyor top to bottom, make sure there's nothing hiding in there. We found raccoons, mice, geese, all sorts of fun things. So double check that. Moving on to the trailer maintenance, some things to check for those of you who have our unit that's on the portable up-down trailer. Some of the things I would go through for that is I would take the trailer up and down, lower it to the ground, raise it back up. As you do that, that will confirm all sides of the air system to make sure that you have not developed any leaks over time. If you have, you can, if you hear air hissing or you see that pressure gauge isn't holding, just some soapy water on the fittings to determine where that leak's at, and we can definitely help and assist with that. On the check your tire pressure, check your trailer lights, basic things there for the trailer. And then the other thing that I'm going to pull up a picture of and show you here, you guys are familiar with us coming around last year in season and adding support brackets to some of those spindles. That spindle should be vertical. We want to make sure that you have that has not rotated at all. So just double check that. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm pulling up a picture of that to share with you to show what exactly those look like. So on your trailer, obviously that we're missing all the equipment on this one or taken from an angle that you don't see the equipment. Each of your trailers has this bracket. That bracket should be vertical and up and down. And so you should see that straight up and down. If it's turned at all, let us know, reach out to us and we'll get that corrected. They should be all in good shape, but we definitely want to double check that and make sure that that's good to go and in good order for this upcoming season. As you raise and lower that trailer, again, that will ensure that there's no leaks around any of the airbags or anything like that. So that will be a good thing to do for there. Moving on to the pump stand, there's a few things to check on that pump stand. Hopefully everybody cleaned out their pump stands at the end of last season with some simple green and water. If that did not happen last season, it will need to be done at the beginning of this year. The better you keep those clean, the better they run. So to go through that, inspect your flow meter. I would put some hot water and simple green in your poly tank. Simple green is what Pivot does recommend for cleaning because it does not kill the product. And so use some simple green, flush that through the system. Check to make sure that your flow meters are reading, things like that. Again, all of this should be fine. Just want to confirm before you're ready to fire up and use it the first time this spring. Your pump elements. So when you guys got those, the pump elements is what the Parasolic pump uses to actually make that product flow. Those we typically say kind of a rule of thumb is about 10,000 units before those need replaced. If you guys left the pump heads locked down all summer long and throughout the off season, you may need to go ahead and replace those. Each of those units did come with multiples of those, so you guys should have extras on site or with your equipment. If you do not, let us know. That is just a common part we keep in stock, so we can get those out to you pretty quickly. You can feel basically the elasticity of them changes to where they're soft and they don't hold their shape when they start to go. The other thing you may notice is if you run a calibration cycle and you have liquid up in your cow tube and it starts to slowly drain back down, that is an indicator that Parasolic hose is worn and it's not keeping enough pressure. You should not drain back from that cow tube and siphon back. So that is something to check for there. And then lastly, check your filter down at the bottom. Make sure that the filter and the screen is all cleaned out. If you left water in that, just inspect that housing to make sure that housing hasn't cracked at all from freezing over the winter. That is then for the agitation, the speed, if that's gotten bumped, the speed for the agitation, we like that to be set to 6 on that dial. Again, this is all in the manuals, just kind of looking high level at some of this stuff. And you can just run a cycle and confirm the operation of that. Moving on, we'll talk about the atomizer and the hopper. There's not a lot to look through with the atomizer and hopper. Up in the hopper, though, I would check, in all seriousness, check to make sure there's not something down in the bottom of that. There's a great place for critters to hide. And so we have run into that probably once a season. We get a phone call if somebody says, my gate's open, seed's not flowing, what's going on? And the vast majority of time we find out that there was some sort of critter or something inside of there keeping seed from flowing. So double check that. Make sure that air gate opens and closes as it should. And then if you did not clean out your atomizer last year, or if you didn't flush water and simple green through your atomizer, I would do that before you get started this season. run simple green clear through the atomizer. I would pull that slide out tray out, put a bucket underneath there, and push water clear through that atomizer. You should see off that atomizer, there are 4 ports that product flows through. We do want all 4 of those ports working in good working order. That's what gives us our even distribution in our atomizing chamber, is by putting product in onto 4 ports onto that atomizing disc instead of just 1. So definitely want to make sure those 4 ports are flowing. If they're not flowing, I know with the pivot product and its ability to mold and kind of get gross after it's not been cleaned out, those have the potential to be plugged if they didn't get cleaned. So if you run water through there and you have your 4 ports are flowing through your atomizer disc, then you're good to go. That's puts you in good shape. And then just lastly, just if that inside of that housing needs cleaned, just go ahead and clean it and get it ready for the season. Last main, yes, sir.
Matt, this is Shane. Hey, could you speak to the importance of not using the power washer to spray up above the atomizing disc because of the motor that it could seize?
Yeah. So Shane, that's a great point. Appreciate you bringing that up. So yes, like Shane mentioned, there is an electric motor inside of that atomizer chamber. That's what makes that atomizer spin. Those motors are not IP rated for being power washed. So as you're cleaning inside of there, do not spray up into that atomizing chamber with the power washer. The motor in there can definitely seize up if that's power washed inside of there, and water can and will get inside of that motor. So it's perfectly fine in the position it is for the liquid to be flowing down through our atomizing disc and chamber. But if you add that extra pressure with the power washer, that could definitely create some issues inside of there. So you can power wash the shoe, you can power wash the belt, but the ring that actually houses the motor, which is what stays in place once you slide the tray out, do not power wash inside of there, please. Good question, or good point, Shane. The last major thing we want to confirm and check for this upcoming season will be load cells and scale calibration. So that system has 4 load cells on it. And so when you pull your system out of the shop, get it fired up and running, we'll want to make sure you set a box or something of known weight on that scale and make sure that your scale is accurate. If your scale is reading a number and that number is not climbing, but the number is not right, that scale just needs calibrated. If you notice any errors or if you see the weight rapidly climbing or decreasing without there being anything on the scale, contact us here at KSi and we'll work with you directly on load cells and potentially swapping some of those out if there's some bad load cells. So definitely pull that out, check that weight. In the online there on the website that they showed you, there is instructions on how to calibrate. There is also in that on our YouTube page, we also have a calibration video there as well. So feel free to watch and review that video so that you have know how to calibrate that scale. If there's any questions through that process, again, if you're struggling to calibrate it, or if you see an error message on your scale indicator or something's just not adding up, call into our office, press that option 1 and type in your project number. That's that 5 digits after the 9 on the top right corner of your panel. It'll say 00569 or something to that effect. You'll get all the people in office and we can walk you through anything we need to with that to help get you calibrated or work on the load cells if needed. That's the kind of the main high level stuff for maintenance and prepping for the season. Do we have any other questions surrounding any of the maintenance portion before we move on to the automation refresher training portion of this? All right, very good. So I will go ahead and share another screen with you here. This is the screen that I'm sharing is the BasicTreat automation, which your systems are equipped with. So this is BasicTreat. So we're going to kind of just go through page by page again, and go through all the settings, show you, remind you everything where it's at. Again, please, if you have any questions at any point in time, just interrupt me and I'll be happy to answer them. That's no problem. This is our homepage. This is where you'll spend the vast majority of your time. A couple of things to highlight to make sure we can see is down here at the bottom. I know we hammered on this last year. The same will be in effect for this year. You should see at the bottom there where it says USB in green. You want to make sure that says USB in green. That means you have your thumb drive plugged in and that you're recording all your runs that you're going to do this spring. If that says no USB, that means the USB is not found. It's not plugged in. Maybe you didn't put it back in after you pulled it last year for your data. So any thumb drive, your USB stick will work for that. That is just plugged into the back of the touchscreen. And so if you don't see that there, go make sure you plug a USB back in so that it records your data. That way you guys have access for that for Pivot and everything that they need from there. All the data should still be there in terms of customers and seed varieties and things like that. That should still all be in the system left over from last year. So we'll just kind of go through this homepage here and work through it. Customers, you can still continue to create lists of customers. As you put your customers in here, that is just add. You can type in your customer name, press enter, and hit add, and that will add our customer in. Selecting a customer from your list, when you put your list of customers in here, when you're treating for them and applying Pivot Bio products, you just come in here, select, click on the customer you want, hit select, and that will assign that customer to that next run. The same thing goes for seed. Seed, you have the couple more options in here. You've got your variety and your lot number. Again, you do not need to create multiple records for the same variety. You can just come in and update your lot number. So if we wanted to change the lot number on this, we just type in our lot number, press enter, and then just hit update, and it will update that lot number. You've also got, you want to make sure you set to seed count units and that you have it set to corn, your seed size, as well as your seeds per unit. That is very important that that information is in there and accurate, as that will make sure that as we apply the Pivot product, we put the right rates on for the seed that you're looking to apply to. And then we can just select this variety and we'll assign that variety as if we're running. Then moving on, next one down is what we have on pump 1, proven 40 OS, 2.4 fluid ounces per unit. And so that rate again is in there from last year. I have not heard of any rates being changed for this upcoming spring. So unless Pivot tells you otherwise, 2.4 will still be the number. That should be set in here, but you can click on your arrow for pump 1. This is your list of liquids. And if you've used this for other things, just make sure you come in here, select proven 40 OS, and then press select, and that will set it back up to run at 2.4 fluid ounces per unit. From there, looking over to the right side of the page here, the seed, the pounds, and the pounds per minute. This is live while you're treating. So your pounds per minute will show and display how fast you're running. Again, with the Pivot products, we want to be around the 700 pounds per minute mark is what has been shown to be the optimal range with that. To adjust that, if you changed it to run other products after the spring season, that is just those 2 manual gates above your air gate on your hopper. You can open or close those a little bit to hit that approximate 700 pounds a minute. You'll have a little bit of a fluctuation based off of the shape of the seed and the size of the seed, but 700 is the goal that we want there. Moving down the page, you'll get your live totals of while you're running. You'll show the ounces per minute that it's applying and then the total application of product. Those totals do reset every batch, so you can see per box where your application is at. The auxiliary 1 enabled, disabled. If you guys are using any sort of dry powder products, you'll enable those through auxiliary 1. If it's enabled, it is, if it says enabled, it will turn and run with your pumps. And then scale weight in the top left, negative 288. We're going to talk a little bit about why that says negative 288 in a minute. That's no cause for concern, but that is a rundown of this. In season last year, we sent several emails about getting a hold of KSi to update your system. You should see your pack version and HMI version down in the lower right. You see .16 and .19. If you've had any issues with printing, that's been the couple of things we've addressed with it is printing and an issue surrounding pump control. If you have any issues with that, look at your versions of that, and you can call into the office and confirm that your system is updated to the right version. There was some data logging that we corrected in season as well. And so just kind of take a look at those. If you don't see that at 16 and 19, reach out to KSi and we can log in and get you updated for that as well. That's a run through of the home screen. We'll kind of click here at the top of a manual operation. I'm not going to turn any devices on. This unit is a full treater trailer sitting in our Sabetha shop. I just want to make sure if nobody's around it, I don't want their hands getting pinched or anything happening. But these are the controls for the system. So if you wanted to run your atomizer in forward, applicator in forward, the applicator being the conveyor, here's your speed. So earlier I said you could slow that conveyor down. If you're wanting to clean, you want to run that belt slower, you can do that here by typing in the lower percentage, and that belt will run slower. These percentages are only for when you are running things manually. The system will set the auto speeds through settings we're going to look at here in a few minutes. So if you don't need to remember what this was at prior to you using it. If you want to slow that belt down to clean it, it's not going to hurt it if you leave that set to 20% or something lower. Hopper gate, liquid solenoid, none of those are equipped with liquid solenoid, but you have your hopper gate. Again, I would open and close that a few times, make sure there's nothing in there. Make sure if there's any dust buildup from it in the shop or whatnot, that's all cleaned out. Pumps, when you're cleaning your pumps out, same thing here. You can run those in forward. You can reverse those as well. And then there's the speed in which they're going to run. You can run your auxiliary device manually, set through here, and then the air purge that fires after every batch. If you want to run that and test that, it's set right there. The status page, this page just shows you kind of where everything is at. And so if you're running seed, you could look at the status page and you will see that your pump's in forward, your atomizer's running, your applicator's running, whether the gate's open or closed, things like that. So that's what that page is for. Flow meter calibration. You guys, if you have more than one pump, I know some of you guys do, you'll see pumps 2, 3, and 4 in the grid. But again, to calibrate these pumps, we need to put the pump in forward, get that cal tube up to 0. And then for our time and speed, we want that cal tube to be as full as possible without overflowing. Typically with those, be 180 seconds for 20% speed should take care of that. In which case, once you've got your speed in there, you can press start. It will run at 20% for 3 minutes. You will come in and type in the amount of ounces you see in the tube into this box, and then calculate will pop up under the start button. You just hit calculate. You'll get a cal factor. That cal factor, again, we talked last year, that cal factor you should typically see anywhere from like 0.95 to 1.1. If you start getting cal factors outside of that range, that's usually a pretty good indication that flow meter is getting gummed up or dirty and just needs cleaned. So go ahead and review that and calibrate those. We do say you should calibrate twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. As the days heat up, you start in the morning when it's a little bit cooler and heats up in the afternoon. Excuse me, that does change the viscosity a little bit, and so the cal cycle should be reran at that point.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah, Shane.
Could you speak to once they do read the amount of liquid in the calibration tube, when they enter it in the tube amount, the importance of hitting enter before they hit like submit.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Good. Yeah, good point, Shane. So with this system, and it's not just this box, but anyways, if you see that cursor is flashing like it does on this screen, press enter. This was one of the big things we noticed last year, and it's just the way this touchscreen is designed. Is pressing enter on your data is what submits the data. So what we found last year was we'd have a couple people call and say, hey, my cal factor is 0. I've run 2 or 3 calibrations. It's not working. What was happening was they were typing in, there was 58 ounces in there, and that cursor was just sitting there continuing to flash. Make sure once you type in, and it's any field really on this BasicTreat system. Once you type in your information, press enter. You'll see that the cursor will stop flashing, and in this box it sets it and moves your decimals in. Then you can press submit. If you press submit and you get your cal factor at 0, most likely you did not press enter after the tube mount. Just go ahead and make sure you press enter, hit submit, and you'll get a good cal factor. Moving on from that page, we'll get into our setup. These settings should all be set exactly where they were last year. These don't change in the off season. These are all set. You shouldn't really have to adjust any of these. So you can continue to run with what you were doing last year. The one thing I do want to remind people about that we did run into and see quite a few calls on last year was surrounding the scale weight and when do you zero, when do you not zero. So I do want to kind of talk a little bit about that. In season, we added this, or right before the season, I guess, we added this box weight setting. This is the weight of your box. You guys need to decide, are you going to take your lids on or keep your lid on or off prior to setting that box up on the box stand. That lid's about 20 to 25 pounds, depending on the box. And so most boxes are around that 290 to 300 pound mark without a lid, 320-ish with a lid. But basically, as long as you type in a weight here for your empty box, if you come in one day and you notice your scales climbed a little bit or walked a little bit, they do that a little bit as the load cells heat up throughout the day. You can press 0 to zero the scale, and then it will basically take the scale indicator weight, subtract what the box weight you have entered in, so that we account for the weight of the box when we're treating. So this in my opinion is the best way to do it. That way you don't have to constantly set an empty box on top of your scale and zero it. You can just zero it, and then so the system will subtract out the weight of your box. The other couple of settings to look at in here, we've got with the SMX, this is the conveyor. This is the speed in which things are running. So you'll have your auto speed set, you'll have your delay speed, delay time, and stop seconds. So this auto speed, that's just how fast the conveyor runs while you're treating. The delay speed, we do put a little bit of a delay time and delay speed. What that does is keeps the belt from moving right at the beginning. So that if there's any seed right at that front section that didn't get covered very well, it will pick up seed on top of it and then start the belt moving from there. And then the stop delay, that is how long the belt will run after. That's how long the belt will run after the hopper gate shuts, so that the belt cleans out. Again, like I said, these settings should all still be in there from last year, so you really shouldn't have to mess with these a whole lot unless you potentially change them, treating some other crop throughout the season with your unit. Down a little bit further, for your printer, you may need to enable your printer. So if you want to print all your tickets as it goes, you'll want that print enabled to be green. If it says print disabled, it will not print. Pump setup, there's not a lot in here you're gonna have to change. Again, this should all still be there. You guys may have used the shift factor a little bit last year. This is basically if you're looking and seeing, okay, I should have applied, 100 ounces of product and I'm consistently at 96, 97. The shift factor on a lot of your systems might be 1. if you're saying you're noticing that you're only putting 96% of the product on that you want, you could take that and put that shift factor to 1.04, which will then allow you to basically tell your pumps to run a little bit faster to hit the rate that you need. And the opposite being is if you're constantly over applying, you're typically, you're seeing you need 100 ounces and you're 3 ounces over. Percentage wise, you could take that to a 0.97, which will tell the pumps just to, hey, take it down a little bit. So moving on, the auxiliary timers. Last year in season, this was added so that there's wanting to only apply a talc product or dry product for a certain amount of time at the beginning of a batch, basically not with all of the seed, but just the first little bit to help the seed flow from the boxes as you go and as you go to dump them. So there's a start delay. The start delay basically just allows it to make sure the seed is up the conveyor to that point, and then how long you want that dry additive feeder to run prior to it shutting off at the beginning of a batch. I believe that was usually around that 10-second mark. So that's the setting. That is the automation kind of refresher training portion. Any questions surrounding the automation or any of the operations of that? All right. Well, very good. That's the bulk of what we wanted to go through, guys. So if there's no other questions, that's pretty much what we've got for you today. We look forward to another successful spring, and give us a shout if you guys need anything. I'll stick around on this call for a little bit to answer any questions that you may pop up. Otherwise, appreciate you guys joining today.
Hey, Matt, I will share something here with you.
Yep.
Over the winter, I had Jason go through and update some of the documents that are on that support page that you've been working from. So if the rep goes to the clickable Pivot Bio overview, I don't know if you can pull up that homepage again and share that screen.
I sure will.
And another thing to point out too, a lot of those cards that were handed out, or magnets that were handed out to not only the Pivot Bio agronomists and TSMs, but also to the treating reps, that QR code will also take you directly to this support page. But if you scroll down and go into the automation BasicTreat and then that clickable overview, that's a good resource for reps and Pivot Bio personnel to go to. It will have a lot of the standard input values as it comes out of our production in there. So go ahead and go back over to pump setup if you can, Matt. I don't know if you can't, the pump setup page. Yeah, so the auxiliary device, which would be the changing times dry additive feeder from last year, the start delay is 2 seconds, and then the on time was established as 21.5 seconds on that last year. And that's a directive we got from Pivot Bio on how they wanted that set up. So that's what I would add to the conversation regarding the BasicTreat, and where reps could go to find some of the values if they're not sure.
Perfect. Very good. Thanks, Shane. All right. Any other questions or any other remarks from anyone?
Are you going to email this out so we can rewatch it, or where will we be able to find this recording?
Yeah, we should be able to distribute it out that way. Yep, I believe so. I believe you'll also have access to it once it's done. But if not, we can post it so that you'll have access. So.
Yeah, this is Matt. I heard we had a fish index additive feeder. You heard about that? And do we have a?
I'm sorry, your connection is pretty weak on my end, so it was pretty choppy there. So I wasn't able to really catch anything of what you were saying.
Yeah, I'm in a tough area. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little better.
Yeah, I heard we had a issue with the automatic dry additive feeder in the wind down in Texas. It was shutting the auger off. Have you guys heard about that? And do we have a fix on that?
This is the first I'm hearing about that. So you're saying that the wind was shutting off your dry additive feeder?
Yeah, well, it's actually Brandon Finch. He was setting the one that automatically weighs and the new automatic dry additive feeder. He said when they were treating outside, it was messing with the weight calibration.
Yeah, I mean, wind on scaled systems is going to always create some challenges with that for sure. Unfortunately, without a wind barrier, there's not a whole lot we can do to change what the scale's reading as it's affected by the wind. Well, we can, I will follow up with our internal team to see if they're looking into something further. But as for now, that's the first I'm hearing of this issue. So I'll have to follow up on that.
Matt Wiley, can you repeat the question? I caught the tail end of that. I might have some feedback on that.
It was just how wind, when we're treating outdoors, additive feeder, how wind affects the weight calibration, I guess is the best way to put it.
So that is, Brandon Finch is using a USC dry additive feeder that's got a load cell on it. The KSi one does not have a load cell on it. So the dry additive feeder should not suffer from that on a KSi unit.
Okay, very good. That's the question I had. Thank you.
The one other comment I'll bring up here too. The settings that Matt was talking about with the dry additive feeder, just to be clear, that is around applying talc, not E007. So if we're applying E007, we won't want to have a time value in there. We'll want to treat the entire box if you're applying E007. The talc was from our recommendations last year when we're applying talc. So we just want to put on that first 10% of the box. We'll run it for 20 seconds, and then it shuts off the dry additive feeder. If you're applying E007, you won't have a value in there, and it'll run through the whole box.
All right. Well, that sounds like that's the end of the questions. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up and call her a day. Let us know if you guys have any further questions. Feel free to call in the automation support line, and we'll be happy to help those. Happy to help.
Thanks, Matt.